It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin. And last week, we did Mock 3.0. Hell yeah, we're back, mock draft style. And now we get to turn our attention back to simply our rankings. But not just any rankings. You already know this is our one and only Superflex rankings of the year.
Yeah, we get to appease the modern folks out in the world, the people that are sitting here like, hey man, nobody plays one quarterback anymore. Why are we doing, where's the Superflex stuff? I want to listen to the show, but it's kind of boring when you don't, include us in the discussion. And that's fair. I play in plenty of Superflex leagues. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. But we just enjoy the classic edition of fantasy football, the one quarterback. But here we are, get these quarterbacks worked in a little bit, but I don't know, maybe less than you'd think.
Yeah. How much different are these going to be than our regular rankings? That will be the big question of this episode is how many quarterbacks are we even talking about in our top 12s at this point in time? I do want to point out the fact that Camp Dynasty is one quarterback plus. So we're not like all the way back in 1976 playing one quarterback, 4-point passing touchdown. No, we have 6-point passing touchdowns with negative 3-point interceptions. It does bring the values of the Lamar Jacksons, Josh Allens, and all of those up. But I get it. We're not with the times, whatever. But so before we hop into our discussion, I feel like we should address something that has been happening and is now kind of almost reaching its end, I think, in the NFL, which is free agency. Once upon a time, we did an entire episode devoted to this topic. I don't know that we need to go that far, but it is a part of the draft process in the sense that it helps inform what we should maybe expect to see teams do on draft night, and specifically, in the first round. So were there any, big stories, big deals, shocking deals, anything that stood out to you from free agency this year?
Well, we can just go kind of down the wide receiver list because I think teams told you what they think of the wide receiver class coming in and went out and spent money on wide receivers. So you obviously had the two big deals that I think was earlier today with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or was that yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yeah, so that happened on Monday, the 17th. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins got their money to stay in Cincinnati. You got DK Metcalf going to Pittsburgh. That was not surprising because he was kind of being shopped around and then ended up with them. So I was like, all right, cool. They needed a wide receiver real bad. We were mocking them wide receiver. And then you had Godwin goes back to Tampa Bay. Devontae Adams goes to Los Angeles to the Rams. So those are kind of, the big ones that you kind of look at like, oh man, the Rams weren't super happy with who they were going to end up getting in the draft to put next to Puka. Cooper Kupp obviously goes to Seattle in kind of tandem with that move, where Seattle's like, I don't really love our options to pair with Jackson Smith and Jigba, so on and so forth. And you see people maybe be a little more aggressive to go get the veterans rather than stand pat and maybe draft somebody.
Yeah, the wide receivers certainly were, the biggest story here, just because I think you had on the offensive side, at least, that's where a lot of the biggest names of this free agent class were, of course. And, I think one of the biggest stories for me is just all of the hype that we get ourselves into every year thinking like, well, T. Higgins, what are they going to do? Tag him again? Are they going to really pay him? And, even to like a Chris Godwin, where it was like, hey, maybe Godwin is like a prize then, Higgins gets tagged and where's Godwin going to go? And then everybody just ends up where they started in most cases, and specifically at the top of these free agent classes. Myles Garrett as well, same thing. Like, demand a trade. Oh, never mind. I'm going to take
that's $40 million a year. Yeah, I suppose I can deal with Cleveland for a couple more years.
So there's always that element. I mean, I think at one point in time, like, we referenced the fact that T. Higgins was likely not coming back to Cincinnati. And, obviously that was a product of just kind of buying into the hype machine a little bit. But that said, I think there were some certainly, interesting deals. DK Metcalf, of course, at the top of that, being that it was the trade coupled with the big deal on top of it. And then Pittsburgh, which is such an interesting spot for him to land, specifically with the Pickens element and what's going on at quarterback there. So that's going to be an interesting one for fantasy purposes.
God bless Mike Tomlin for what he's going to have to deal with.
Seriously. And speaking of quarterback, I think that's another one of the bigger stories. And it wasn't because there was a lot of quarterbacks. It was just the ones that went were sort of intriguing. Like Geno Smith exits Seattle and in comes $100 million man Sam Darnold. And I did see that they like baked in that like it could just be a 1 year $37 million deal, and if he like completely falls flat on his face, they can immediately cut him after next season. So smart on them, but hopefully the flashes that we saw last season are not just a flash in the pan moment under Kevin O'Connell for Jackson Smith and Jigba's purposes. At least that's what I'm hoping
and
for.
Cup.
And Cup, yeah. But maybe the more interesting one even was Justin Fields.
Right.
Because speaking of Mike Tomlin, I mean, there was like part of me that was wondering, would they just bring Fields back and let him be the guy? And instead, Fields goes to the Jets on a $40 million contract, which, I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
$30 million guaranteed, like 2 years. It's basically, can we inject life into this offense and keep our jobs? Is like how this feels with because like in 2 years, if this doesn't go well, you're running up on Garrett Wilson, on Breece Hall, on pretty much like Sauce Gardner, et cetera, that you've poured into this roster to run back with Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, and obviously has the Achilles injuries, and then is fine last year, like pretty average. And then, you trot Fields out there to try to save the day. I like Justin Fields enough, but I don't know if he couldn't start over Russell Wilson last year in Pittsburgh. I don't know how this is like a huge upgrade, but it's going to be more fun to watch than the Jets were last year, at least. Like, we'll have a little more of a dynamic offense and a little more juice to kind of spread around. But I don't. Hopefully he's good, but I just don't. Yeah. I don't have high expectations.
I mean, to bring in the new regime and Aaron Glenn and the excitement that came with that hire, and then for them to just, I mean, I guess I don't know what their other options were. That's the thing. It's like, if it wasn't Fields, who was it?
Yeah.
Bringing Aaron Rodgers back? Probably not. And
Russell
at that
Wilson.
point, exactly. Like, who else is out there for this team if they're not getting one in the draft? So I guess give it a shot, see what happens with Fields. But it's a weird time, very weird time. Quarterback is, I think, going to be in a weird state next year with the movement, and then some of the names that we've seen kind of rise up, like the Darnolds and even the Genos, and now they're both in new situations. How will that, look this year? We'll find out.
It's gonna. I mentioned last week, I kind of like what the Raiders are doing.
Yeah.
I was very skeptical about like everything going on there, especially with like Pete Carroll coming in. I'm like, what are they gonna do? Like, Pete Carroll is gonna coach some rookie for 4 years and he's going to be 80. Like, I don't know. This feels odd. So I like that they kind of put a little bit of an accelerator on it and maybe, be a little scrappy 9-8 kind of team.
Maybe take a running back at 6 in the draft. I don't know.
Oh. Well, the Bears at 9, revamped O-line.
I know. That's the thing. It feels like the pavement has been laid for both of those things to happen. Like if the Raiders could do it. It feels like that has almost become like the trendy spot to put Jeanty in a mock draft is now number 6. And if he doesn't go there, I think to me, what I would say is the floor is Chicago at 10. I don't think he gets past Chicago at 10 in any scenario.
I wouldn't let him get past.
So, well, speaking of running backs,
are they at 10 or 9? I thought they were.
I think they're at 10.
Okay, with being wrong.
I mean, you might be right. I don't know. But speaking of running backs, just to round out the conversation with the positions that we mostly care about here, wasn't as exciting. Of course, we knew that this running back free agent class was pretty bad, and that's why this draft class was so well timed. But the one that I found maybe the most, I wouldn't say puzzling, but like we talked about the Vikings quite a bit as a running back landing spot that made a lot of sense. And not only did they bring back Aaron Jones on a $13 million guaranteed $20 million deal, but then they also traded for Jordan Mason and gave him a contract. So Vikings said, no, we don't need this running back class. We're going to go in this direction.
Yeah, it's basically the opposite of how I feel like teams should approach their running back possession, especially in a class like this, when you have, 6 viable guys that can like lead a backfield feasibly, especially in this kind of scheme, like maybe even more than that. I don't understand it. I love Aaron Jones as a Packer fan. Like, I love him to death. Jordan Mason, very good, like 2-man in a backfield, a guy that can lead if you need to. But like, I just feel like I'd rather have TreVeyon Henderson. I don't know. Like maybe have one of them and then draft a guy. I don't know. I don't love it.
I agree with that. I think, and they could still take somebody. This doesn't, eliminate that, especially, later in the draft where there's still going to be talented backs available, but certainly was interesting. My favorite running back move, Najee Harris to the Chargers. I think that one, which we did briefly talk about on the pod last week because I had seen the notification while we were talking about it, but that one is just like, if there's any hope left, if there's any like real value left with Najee Harris in Dynasty, it just happened because now you can talk people into, well, look at what J.K. Dobbins just did. And they might not be wrong. Then Najee might actually have that sort of a season.
Another player like that is Javonte. Javonte to the Cowboys, who's still only 24. He did have like a major knee injury and then hasn't really been the same since, but goes to Dallas as like the only running back on that roster. This is what we just did with them last year with Rico Dowdle, but he goes there with Miles Sanders, and it's like, I don't know. Could I talk myself into either one of those guys as a starting running back? Maybe, because we loved Javonte Williams at one point. I think we all did. We all loved his running style, and don't think like one knee injury is going to take it away from somebody. But that's the reality of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, the dollar amount on that deal was what was kind of shocking to me, and that's probably just dynasty brain. Like, even just last year, I think people still were like, "Oh, maybe this is
the beginning of the year for sure."
Yeah, and then it's 1 year, $3 million, only one guaranteed for Javonte in a very running back needy spot. So that's kind of telling you that what they think, but opportunity, we know that's the king. We'll see.
Right.
All right. Anything else from free agency?
I don't think so. I just went to KTC to see where Javonte was at the beginning of the year, and I got Aaron Rodgers, and I was like, I got shell shocked for a second there. I don't want to. Oh my God, there's just okay. 2024, before the season, he was RB 25. So it's not like people were all the way in, but now he's running back 48. So it's a pretty steep fall off from where he was.
Damn. All right. Let's talk Superflex rankings. And if you don't play Superflex, but you wanted to listen anyway, that's okay. Because I think the majority, thank you. And the majority of the players here are certainly going to be non-quarterbacks. This is a follow-up to the mock draft from last week where we were alternating, and there was also some, questionable war room strategy from my side. I kind of wanted to let it rip a little bit and just kind of riff. But now I'm coming in with a set-in-stone big board. We're going to see exactly our top 12 players at this point, but including, a Superflex lens. So in that sense, Collin, I'm going to turn to you to kick this thing off with your number 12 player.
Okay, my number 12 player. Are we including IDP in this? I forgot to ask.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. All right. I'm keeping Abdul Carter here. Number 12, I had him there in the mock draft. I was like, we can't let Abdul Carter fall out of the first round. Still have him here. It's usually you get about one IDP player in the first round if there's an elite one in the class. And I think that Carter fits that mold most of the first round. A lot of running backs, receivers, maybe a quarterback. I don't know. Not in my board because we got Carter here at 12, and it seems like quarterback might fall out. I don't know. We'll see.
Just might. We'll talk about it. All right. I do not have Abdul Carter in my top 12, but my number 12 player, who I'm almost certain is not in your top 12, is Colston Loveland.
I'm at 15.
So, and I know you're lower on him in general. Mm-hmm. We talked about that last week, but I thought a lot about this one. But I just still believe that the talent here is too supreme. Even in Superflex, I mean, obviously everybody knows Tyler Warren is going to be higher on this list. He's going to be higher on your list. Like, that's not a secret here. So I still have two tight ends in my top 12 for Superflex just because I believe so much in the talent of these two guys at the top of that position group.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Loveland is a really smooth player. He's got, a lot of good nuance to his game that you really want out of a tight end. I think he can also throw down a little bit if you put him in the trenches. He's not the best blocker, but he's serviceable, and I think has the frame to get him to be good enough. But yeah, I like Loveland. I just like him middle of the second round instead of up in the first.
Yep. And I should point out too, if you are listening to this and you just found Camp Dynasty looking for Superflex rankings for this year, welcome. And if you want to hear more detailed breakdowns of all of these players, you can go back through our Rankings 2.0 series where we are fresh off of our tape dive and talking pros, weaknesses, all of that stuff in way more detail than we're going to be doing today. So,
somebody asked me, they're like, you haven't talked running backs in a while. How do you feel about this player? And I'm like, it's all the same as it was because no new tape has come out. So if you want to, if like nothing has really changed, the only thing between then and now is the combine, and those takes are independent of their athletic testing, I'd say. So if you do want to go back and you're like, oh man, this is a couple months ago, it's still pretty evergreen.
95% like the same.
Yep.
So, all right, number 11 for you.
Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver at Ohio State. Where do you have him?
I have him at number 9.
Okay. Hey, that's the controversy.
Yeah.
So Egbuka is obviously a very like technically good receiver. He's good at a lot of different things. He's a really good slot receiver. Maybe if you do go back, or if you have listened to that wide receiver episode, you might hear us say like a little less than we wanted out of Egbuka, I think, but still very dynamic and like such a high floor as a player. I think a guy that could be a very high volume number 2 receiver in an offense. I think I keep coming back to that as like the ideal role, is have, a really good number 1, and then Egbuka just kind of vacuum up targets in the slot, and then, use the spatial awareness and the good hands and tight coverage, find some windows, that kind of thing. I think he could be just a very good fantasy asset in general because of the amount of trust you can put in Egbuka to deliver in critical moments like third downs or in the red zone.
Yeah, this is the controversy that you're talking about. If you listen to the mock draft last week, I had a little bit of a moment of, oh no, I think I forgot Emeka Egbuka, and that is because I did. So he went in the top of the second round in our mock last week. I would have taken him at some point in the middle to late part of the first round, because I still love his game. I mean, you said it, like I think part of it was just how much you loved the 2022 film, and going into 2023 thinking this is going to be one of the guys. Like, this is going to be, he is the natural like successor to the JSN sort of receiver, that we just had in the 22 class. And then it just hasn't been the same since that point, with the injuries last season. And then this past year, just sort of, not fully reaching that pinnacle again. And of course, he was playing with CJ Stroud 2 years ago and was playing with Will Howard this year. Yes, they won a national championship, but that is obviously not the, a like quarterback situation there. So, and he still had a great year. I mean, he still had a very productive season for them, had big moments through the season, those flashes of that greatness that we remembered. It just wasn't fully 100% put together in the way that would have had me hammering the table for him as a top 5 sort of pick in this dynasty rookie class. But I still have him at number 9 here in Superflex.
I also think GMs are probably going to be really high on Egbuka. I feel like he's the grinded out, hard nosed kind of receiver in the top end of this draft class. And, the high end for us could be different from the high end for a lot of different people, because the margins are pretty slim with a lot of these guys. I think you and I have a different opinion on number 1 versus everybody else. But if you have a lower opinion on the guy that we have number 1, it's like there's a very clear path to Egbuka maybe being your wide receiver 1 in this class. So I think that's the kind of margins we're talking about with the wide receiver class.
Yeah, I would say that, like, I think you and I are sort of like maybe outliers at this point with what we think about the top of this wide receiver group. We will get to that point and talk a little bit more about that. But I think generally a lot of people are there where this like top 4 or 5 guys, these are all going to be, pretty tightly packed grade wise. I mean, you've heard buzz like maybe Egbuka is the first wide receiver taken in the NFL draft even. And that,
right.
I wouldn't be like shocked or, like, what are they doing? Like I would understand. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but I would understand. And especially, in the right scheme, in the right system, I that's something I'd be looking for with this player as well. We've talked a lot about Houston, but a scheme that's going to let him do the things he does best consistently.
Then who's your number 11?
My number 11 is TreVeyon Henderson. So
I have him at 10.
So yeah, this is pretty consistent. I think TreVeyon, where did he go in our mock last week? Like a little bit higher than this, I think, but I think this late part of the first round, and especially in Superflex, but as we'll come to find out, maybe that isn't even impacting this so much. The late first round in general is just so unbelievable when you talk about getting a player like TreVeyon Henderson at number 11. Because I know for a fact, I've talked to people, I've seen this. Some people have Henderson as like RB2 in the class. And I'm like, yeah, man, I get that. I understand why you'd think that. For me, I think he's coming in as like RB5 or something like that. And I mean, you're regardless, you're getting a player like that, an RB5 at 11. That's one of the, most talented running backs we've had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, TreVeyon, a few years ago was somebody we expected to be a RB1 kind of player. And had he come out last year, like we expected him to, there was a world where he would have been the RB1 in that class, given the talent of that class, not because of how good TreVeyon was last year, because he was banged up for a lot of 2023. So if he comes out, like maybe you feel a different way and you take him number 1 in the 2024 draft class. But now you come back this year and like you have the opportunity to draft him at the back of the first round. And I think that is kind of a outlier situation. Like you say, it's like, this doesn't happen every year. You don't have end of round 1 picks and have chances to get, either a high end RB2 in an offense or just a straight up RB1 in an NFL offense. So I think this is a pretty fun landing spot for anybody that's hoping to get a running back.
So number 10.
Number 10 for me is TreVeyon, and your number 10 is?
And my number 10 is Quinshon.
Okay. I have Quinshon at 6.
So this running back conversation can continue here because I still have these 2 backs from Ohio State linked pretty much at the hip. And yep. I go back to 2.0. We were talking about them, right next to each other in terms of the rankings there. I still see it the same. I have gone back and forth on which one I prefer. It's a little bit splitting hairs. The tape is similar, but in different ways. They're very different running backs. And that's the thing. It's always going to come down to, what do you value more in the position? Do you value a player like TreVeyon, who has this explosive acceleration and deep speed to rip off these huge plays and change the game, in a 1 play basis? Or do you value, a player that can get in and out and can make guys miss and maybe even run some guys over and do hit a little bit more doubles than home runs? And that's going to be a player like Quinshon. So I've gone back and forth on both of these guys, which style I prefer, which style I think is more valuable. And I think for me, coming out of the combine, realizing that Quinshon had the, elite athleticism at his size that we thought we saw very clearly on tape 2 years ago at Ole Miss, that we thought, maybe something happened here at Ohio State this year. Well, not really. And while I'm not just going to, ignore that, I think this was a, quote unquote down year of film for him, but that is, of course, only by his standards. The numbers at the combine do mean something to me, and I'm giving him this tiebreaker at this point.
Yeah, I am trusting myself from the past is what I'm doing with my ranking here. I'm going to say, listen to what you said preseason when we ranked this player number 1 overall in the class because of how damn good his tape was at Ole Miss. And that this was going to be a down year statistically, a down year in terms of production, because he has to share the backfield with the guy we just talked about, who is going in the first round of this dynasty draft and is going to be probably a high to mid second round pick in the NFL draft with Judkins. And that's okay. So I think I'm just going to lean on that because I still loved the tape this year. It was a little different than what we saw at Ole Miss, but he was asked to do different things. I think that's the main thing that kind of got to hone in on is when he's asked to be this straight up kind of power back battering ram, he's able to do it. He was like pretty good as that back at Ohio State. And then when he was at Ole Miss, they were kind of like, hey, we need a hero in the backfield. And he was able to do that more times than not at Ole Miss. So the fact that, like you said, the combine confirms a little bit of the, like, I feel like he lost a little bit of the juice that he had at Ole Miss, and he goes out and like dominates everything there. It's like, okay, maybe not. Maybe it's just the role dictated the style.
And that's a really interesting, like, bigger conversation about, prior year of film versus current year, and how much, do we weigh the current tape versus what we've seen in the past? Like, what is the balance there, where it's like, I've seen this from you, but I didn't see it this year. So did it disappear? What does that mean? And I think it's just, it's fun to have that context when, because when I started, watching NFL draft guys, it was like, you pull up the list for the new year, you watch the guys, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what I think about them. And now it's like, we've been watching Quinshon for years at this point, and we have that historical, like, database to draw off of, to be like, well, actually in 2023 he looked like that. So sorry, I'm just getting a little draft nerdy here, but I think that's an interesting conversation that we could have, we had with Egbuka as well.
Please enjoy each year equally.
All right. Number 9 for you.
Number 9 for me is Devin Neal, who I'm assuming is not in your top 12, and that's okay. So Devin Neal, I still love what I see out of Neal. If you want to hear me wax poetic about him, you can go back to any episode, because any chance I get to talk
for 2
about
years.
Devin Neal, yeah, exactly. Any episode I get to talk about Devin Neal, I'm going to talk about him like he's my son out on the playing field, and I love watching him play. I would have had him as my RB1 last year. I'll say that again. Right ahead of TreVeyon Henderson. That's why, that holds true through this year, where he's one spot ahead of TreVeyon in these rankings. Neal added a between the tackles game this year that he didn't really have previously, and I would have had him as an RB1 before he added that, just because of what I liked as just a tackle breaker, as an open field runner. And then you add in, like, the quote unquote real running back skills, and it's like, man, he's kind of got a little bit of everything besides long speed. So I still like the all around player that Devin Neal is. I like him as a pass catcher, and I like him as both kind of a gadgety outside zone runner and now a between the tackles runner. So I'm all in.
Are you going to get a Devin Neal jersey when he gets drafted?
Depends if he goes to a team that has cool jerseys.
So it's a team. It would be a team dependent.
I mean, I'm not going to get under no circumstance am I going to get like a Bears jersey or like a Commanders jersey.
Okay.
Because those things are just like hideous. So if he goes to somewhere with like cool jersey, I'll think about it.
All right. Yeah. No, I love Neal too. I just, he's your guy, and he has been and will continue to be, and I love that. And honestly, I think what we talked about, was it last week, calling him like Kaleb Johnson light, I think is just it's such a good way to speak to his game. And like, honestly, there might be people that think, hey, Kaleb Johnson and Devin Neal, they're not that different, man. Like, they're kind of in the same tier for me. I think that would be fair. I think you and I feel differently, but I think to us, it's just everything you love about Johnson. You're getting that at a, maybe just a notch lower with Devin Neal. So He's a great player. All right. My number 9 was Emeka Egbuka. So I can go with my number 8. And here's where we're going to get to talk about quarterback.
Ooh.
I have Cam Ward at number 8.
Okay.
I'm gonna assume he's higher on your list.
He's not.
He's not.
No.
Wait a minute.
I came into Superflex rankings without a quarterback in my top 12. That's what I did today.
So I was sitting here like counting because I was like, wait, if I have him here and he's got the, and I'm like, does he not have Shadur? Because I don't have Shadur. I mean, that's everybody know. You should know Cam Ward is my quarterback one in this class. So I don't have Shadur, and I'm like, is that a hot take? And what you're telling me is it's not even hot enough.
No, I have Cam Ward in my Superflex rankings at 13, Shadur at 14. So I was like, do I just put him in the first round so I talk about him? And I was like, I'm not going to move Abdul Carter out of the first round for fucking Cam Ward. So, no, they didn't make it. I'm sorry.
So I will say, if you are, because admittedly, it's like Superflex is not the first love here. And so if you're sitting here like, what the hell are these guys doing, man? Like quarterbacks and Superflex, this is what happens. I'm going to take Cam Ward at like number 2 in my draft. And I'm not going to say that you're wrong to do that, but for me, and I'm assuming this is going to be the same for you, I cannot justify putting players that I think have a far more like murky future to be like a much harder path to become like real star level players at their position over guys that I like truly believe can be stars, like TreVeyon, Quinshon, like Loveland at tight end. Like these are all guys that I'm like, these are stars in the making. These guys can be stars easily. So I don't have Shadur. I do have Cam Ward though, but I have him here at number 8 because I like Ward's game quite a bit in terms of this class. And I think that's important to say. I think we have seen the writing sort of get put on the wall with Tennessee not making any sort of significant moves to address the quarterback spot, which would tell me that Cam Ward is likely going at number 1, or they're going to trade back and they're going to take, a Shadur or Jackson Dart or something like that, like later on in the first round. I'm going to just assume Cam Ward's going first overall in the draft at this point. And even then, I'm still like, there's not all 7 names I have above Ward right now. Like I can't justify this. I can't justify putting him higher, even though he's going to be the first overall pick, because you and I have both talked about the fact that he's not a first overall pick in terms of talent, in terms of grade, in terms of film. I think there's a lot of things to really get excited about on Cam Ward's film in terms of the playmaking and, some of the improvisation that he shows you, and the really fun stuff from specifically this past year at Miami that he showed with the gunslinger mentality. Even then, I'm a little bit nervous about what you're going to turn into. I still think there is enough of a chance here that he becomes a solid, good, fantasy startable, especially in Superflex sort of quarterback. But 8 is as high as I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, the reason I have him where I have him, and you're probably going to think I'm crazy too, because these are their quarterbacks. It's Superflex, like you said. Like, what do you mean we aren't putting him, however high? Well, let me just lay it out. Where these guys are successful is as passers. Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, neither of them are very high upside runners. I think we can both agree on that. Cam Ward is a nice improv player, but like the ceiling on these guys is very capped. And if this were a mock draft, maybe it goes differently because like you need a quarterback on your team. And like if you're a very quarterback needy team in your dynasty league, like I don't blame you for going and getting Cam Ward because you're guaranteed that he's going to play for the Titans. Like there's no question about that. So I understand. And like maybe I didn't learn my lesson with Bo Nix last year. Like if he's going to get drafted this high he's going to start and there's a chance he'll be good. Sure. But the way I feel about these players is we aren't at the point where I can justify putting a guy that's going to average 18 points a game, maybe 16 points a game at the quarterback position because they're going to throw 260 yards and 2 touchdowns and a pick. I'm all right. I just don't think I need to prioritize that over guys that I feel very strongly will be successful in an NFL role long term. And I'm okay with being wrong on that. I'd rather plant my flag on something that I feel strongly about and be wrong on it than sit here and say be disingenuous about how I feel about Cam Ward and then end up being wrong about it. I wish I would have just stuck with my gut and put him at 13,
I feel like that is a situation that has happened to many people that put their opinions out there with the draft because it's very group things very real. And especially when the NFL's talking, that's when you really tend to listen. Hey, you're going to take this guy first overall. What am I missing? What do I need to know? But yeah, I am with you. I think it's, it's important to understand, just because he's going number 1 doesn't mean that I should feel comfortable taking him ahead of players that I think are legitimate stars in the making at their position. And that said, I think a really important point of what you said is that this is rankings. This is in a vacuum. If you are in a Superflex draft and you're at number 3 and you have you have one startable quarterback on your roster, I don't blame you for taking Cam Ward at number 3. I mean, there's a roster management component to any dynasty rookie draft. Rankings can only tell you so much. So in that sense, it's not necessarily oh my God, what are you doing? Don't take Cam Ward at number 3 under any circumstance. There's going to be a time and a place for that, I think. And certainly many dynasty rookie drafts will have these quarterbacks much higher than we're talking about them today when we look at the ADP data this summer and stuff. But this is what we see. And I'm glad that you and I are kind of, on the same page with this.
How did you feel rostering CJ Stroud this year?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you as somebody who has CJ Stroud.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't fun.
It's this quarterback, this is the scoring format of the league we're in together. And you have CJ Stroud. And it's he was bad this year, but he had 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. And I think that's about what you expect these guys to do on a good year, a really good rookie year. That's what it turns out as. And you kind of have a bad taste in your mouth after. So I don't know. That's kind of just where I'm at. And that's, we're talking Superflex in this kind of league setting, and hopefully you're not doing 6-point passing touchdown and Superflex. Have to be kind of crazy to do that. So you talk about 20 touchdowns as a good year for a rookie quarterback, and you're getting 80 total points out of it. It's just, I don't know. I'm not happy with the best case scenario with these guys, so I'm leaving them out.
You start 2 of them, but man, you still got to start good players. I mean, that's you can't win games if you're not starting good players. So, all right. Well, I'm glad we got to have that discussion. I'm glad that I stuck Cam in there so we didn't get to number 1. Oh my God. But, all right. Well, let's keep it moving. Your number 8?
My number 8 is Tyler Warren, tight end, Penn State. Tyler Warren's just a really impressive player. Could have him higher, wouldn't blame you. I flirted with the idea of putting him at 7, but he's going to be solid. We talked a little bit about the tight end market and how that affected where he might land, because we talked about, the Broncos. We talked about who just signed Evan Ingram, and it's oh, well, that kind of takes him off the list. Who are the other names if you have them off the top of your head?
Tight ends, Juwan Johnson.
Right.
Did you say that?
And he made big money going back to the Saints. He had the highest tight end contract, and then Mike Gesicki to the Bengals, where that was another kind of target for Tyler Warren. So it's like, oh, where does he fall? And like, does he go to the Jaguars? And that would be pretty high, but that would be kind of fun. But I don't know. The tight end market is kind of weird, but as we saw last year, maybe that doesn't really inform where he ends up, because we thought since the Raiders had Michael Mayer that Brock Bowers had no chance of going there, and then Michael Mayer's on the trade block this year. So
yeah, so I have Warren at number 7, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. There's a really tough spot for me in the middle of the first round this year in both formats, but we'll talk about that. But yeah, so Warren is my number 7. Obviously, everybody knows my thoughts at this point. Second highest graded offensive player in the draft class. I have him at number 7 because he's a tight end, and at the end of the day, that does matter, and especially in a class like this where there are guys ahead of him that I think are like really, really top notch, potential players at running back and wide receiver. But don't tempt me. Put me on the clock at like number 5, and I just might do it.
Yeah, that's fair. This is the type of guy that I've mentioned, and I mean, you've kind of agreed with me, is like, if you missed out on Brock Bowers last year, you get a little FOMO. Maybe you take him a little higher than you should. Maybe you get a little irresponsible with him.
So, number 7 for you.
Number 7. Did you do your? Yeah, Ward was your 8.
Warren was
my
your
7. My 7 is Luther Burden.
And he's my number 6. And this is the really hard conversation for me.
Why is this
so the Burden Warren? That's one that I
same.
keep. So like last week during the mock, I took Warren with Burden still on the board, and I thought a little bit more about that, and like I opted to go with Burden a spot higher here. So and you did the same. So what makes you want to do that with Burden?
Yeah, I really like Luther Burden. I think that there's a lot of excuses you can throw out for why he might have disappointed a little bit last year, especially in the stat column. He was like a preseason favorite to be a top 15 pick, and he was a preseason favorite to potentially win the Biletnikoff and, all of the things because of how good of a 2023-2024 season he had, and things just kind of all broke the wrong way for him. He is a little bit, it seems like he's a little bit limited in his usage at Missouri, but I also don't really trust Missouri to show off how good he is because of how bad they were at utilizing him all of last year. So I really like the skills this player has. I like what he can do with the ball in his hands. I like what he can do as a route runner. He's quite good out of the slot. I don't hate him as like a Z receiver, though it's pretty far and few and far between on his tape. So I'd like to see him used a little bit more that way. But I think he has to go to a team that plays a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, which is most teams these days. It's not like hard to find, but also throws to their slot quite a bit and doesn't just, use them to kind of be a distraction, just like run into people over the middle, like actually have your slot involved and, run some screens for them, run some touch passes for them in the backfield, use them in those kind of quote unquote gimmicky ways, but also use them as a real receiver here and there.
Yeah. Like, that's kind of the thing, is like I agree with you in the sense of like there's, I think, some limitations. There's going to be some scheme dependencies here, and in that sense, it kind of makes sense to value, even at the tight end position, a player like Warren who feels so a notch above, where there's really not any lingering questions about how to use him, what can he do, what level can he reach in the NFL, I think we are in agreement that he can be one of the best tight ends in the entire league, and somewhat quickly. Whereas Burden, there is that question about ceiling. And, we've talked about, kind of capping him as a high-end number 2 in the NFL because of like his skills and what he's shown us even in, a dominant season at Missouri 2 years ago. But then I come back to the idea that, like, man, his skill set is still so rare. Like it really is. Even if he's not going to be projected as, the player that maybe we expected he could be a couple years ago, I still think this yak ability and the shiftiness and the ability to almost like just teleport, man. He just like goes invisible. He's using like powers on Marvel Rivals and like morphing through people. Like he is truly a game breaker in the open field at this position. So while I do have those questions about the completeness of his game and what that means for him, long term and his NFL ceiling, I still, think there is a fantasy, nuclear bomb in this player. He has the sort of skills that can do that.
You just need a head coach and an offense coordinator to both hold the key and turn it, man.
That's it. That's it right there, man. All right. So we are on number 5, right?
Yep.
And your number 5 is?
Who do you think my number 5 is?
Kaleb Johnson.
You're right.
Okay. I'm wondering if we have the same top 5, but
probably
we'll get there. But yes, Kaleb Johnson is my number 5. Still love the kid, man.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about Kaleb Johnson. It's just like he's a damn good running back. Like,
there's just not a lot. There's no buzz to talk about, right? Like nobody's talking about him to even like stir the pot. Like even with Burden, the pot is kind of being stirred in like, is he not going to be a first round pick in the NFL? Like what's going on with this? Like why is there this negative noise? With Johnson, there's just no noise at all. I have no idea what to expect.
We got out of the combine where it was like, bad combine, how far does Johnson fall? And I feel like that already ran its course. And like, we're kind of just back to, Kaleb Johnson's good. Like he's going to be a number 1 running back in almost any situation. That's not one of the guys. And that's it.
Yeah. That's it. But he will be one of the most, one of the players that I'm most intrigued by on draft weekend. Like, where is his name called? Because I don't think we have a clear sense of that quite yet. And I think it varies somewhat significantly from like big media analyst to big media analyst as well.
What do you think the floor and like the ceiling of Johnson is? Because I think it's a wide range, like you said.
Yeah, I would say that the ceiling is the top of round 2. I don't think he can get into round 1, especially with the combine being the way that it was. I think the top of round 2 is the ceiling, and I think the floor is like, I'll be pretty, like liberal with this prediction, but like, I can't say that.
No politics on our show.
Middle of the 3rd round is what I'll say his floor is.
Okay. That seems low, but yeah. I also, like, if it happened, I'd be mad, and I could see that being a real thing happening. Right? Being like, somebody take Kaleb Johnson. Yeah, right. Jesus.
Like the depth of the class and like more athletic guys getting like pushed up the board a little bit. I don't think it will happen, but I could see it.
And then like the Rams take him, and it's like,
oh shit.
Gross.
Damn it. All right. So number 4.
Yep. I have Travis Hunter here, and I think you have him higher.
I don't.
Oh, okay. So we're aligned.
Yeah.
So I think this top 4 is going to be lockstep here.
I think so.
So Travis Hunter, we have IDP. Somebody asked the question, what if you're not in IDP league? And I think that's a great question because I have no idea what to do with Travis Hunter if you're not in IDP league.
So I'll say this right now, and we've talked about this a lot. The grade that I have on the page for Travis Hunter is purely wide receiver film. The grade that I have on the paper is wide receiver film. And we talked about that last week in the mock draft, and I ended up taking him at the 3rd pick, I believe, because I was like, I don't think that I have baked in his full value with the grade that I have, and therefore where he is sitting on my board right now. This spot is reflective of where I would take just the wide receiver Travis Hunter.
Right. And I think the question doesn't lie with his talent. Like, I don't think that that's the issue here. I think the issue is what's he going to do in the NFL? And that's the question that's going to be unanswered, which is why I say, like, I don't know. I don't know what you do with Travis Hunter if you're not playing an IDP league, because if you're in an IDP league, you can feel comfortable that if nothing else, you have a like really good DB to slot in.
Yeah.
And like if he's playing corner 80% of the time that he's playing, like you can't really plug and play him as a wide receiver, even though he is like hella dynamic as a wide receiver. Like, I don't know. That's where the challenge comes up for me.
Yeah, You're right. Because that's something like I'm thinking like if he plays wide receiver 100% of the time, this is where he should go. Like,
I agree.
He's that level of a wide receiver talent. But that you raise the point. It's a lot murkier than that.
Yeah.
Because if he isn't playing 100% on offense, which is, kind of likely, I would say like most likely at this point. I don't know what the percentage is, but then it's like, well, do you prioritize guys like Johnson and Burden and Warren over him if you can't guarantee he's going to get enough snaps to be super offensively relevant every week?
And then there's the Shohei Ohtani piece that I brought up last week, that it's like if you have a wide receiver Travis Hunter and separately a DB Travis Hunter, how often are you going to feel comfortable slotting him into that wide receiver spot? So there's a lot of questions about what he'll play, and that's been the story with him through the entire draft process. That'll be the entire story until September, until we see a real regular season game where he's playing one way, both ways. That'll be our answer. But until then, it's all going to be smoke and mirrors and, oh my God, look at this training camp clip of Travis Hunter roasting a guy, cooking Jack Jones. And then it'll be like, oh my God, he picked off Drake May the next drive. It's like, okay, we're good. Like, I don't know if that's a real thing. I've put him on the Patriots in my head.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know.
It's a scary range of the draft this year because it feels like there is a potential landmine if you take Hunter and things don't go the right way.
And he, like, what if he just plays corner and
Right.
doesn't really play receiver?
Right.
I hope your rookie drafts are late this year. That's all I'll say.
Well, we'll keep talking about that, of course.
Right.
But number 3 is this is where we might be different. I have Omarion Hampton.
Oh, why?
What do you mean why?
No, I'm just kidding.
Do you?
I have McMillan here, but like,
okay. So I know that you have over the last several weeks, I think, gotten to a point where it's like we're going running back on the top of the draft. I still have a higher grade on McMillan, and that's why, this happens. But there is a conversation to be had, of course, if Hampton goes top 15 in the NFL draft, which I don't think is going to happen, but there is at least a chatter right now that he might go way higher than people are like anticipating him to go. And if that happens, I think like you have to have a conversation like this, especially if McMillan ends up falling and goes to like a weird spot. But I still, obviously this top 4 is like top 5, maybe for me is like the top, 2 to 5 is a tier. And then there's a separate thing on top, but
right.
I love all of these players. I think all of them have, really, really high ceilings in terms of what they can be. And I think Hampton in particular, while he is not Jeanty at all, and let's get that very straight, even if Jeanty goes 6 and Hampton goes 12, these are not players that I think are on the same level. But that's not to say Hampton is not a great prospect in his own right.
Yeah, I think that Hampton is incredible. Like there is a lot of realities where Omarion Hampton is 101 in this class, and we just happen to live in the Ashton Jeanty reality where that's not the case. And that's all right, because then, you don't have to have 101 to get an elite running back prospect on the roster. And in this case, like, you could be as low as 103 and still feel great about who you're getting. And like, maybe somebody like wants Travis Hunter really high, and like you could be at 104 looking at Omarion Hampton and feeling great. So this is, a running back that has pass catching upside on top of being an excellent pure runner. Just don't watch him after you've watched Jeanty. That's the advice I would give you if you're watching tape. Watch these guys in reverse order. That's what I've started to do, because then you kind of end with dessert. You end with the nice sweet, I get to watch Ashton Jeanty. This is all worth it. But you also don't poison your mind with the, comparison is the thief of joy. And he's not as good of reading the O-line as Jeanty is. Yeah, nobody is. Sorry. That's just the reality. So Omarion Hampton, though that may be a small red X on the scouting report, there's a lot of green checks to go along with it.
And we got this or that coming up in a couple weeks.
You best believe Jonathan Taylor is going to be on there.
There's going to be some good ones for Hampton, I think. But all right. So then number 2 for me, number 3 for you, Tetairoa McMillan, a very, again, we talk about the draft process, the narratives, everything that goes into this. McMillan is a player right now that is suffering, as every single one of these guys does. It is without fail. Every single year, this type of wide receiver prospect will go through the exact same narrative roller coaster.
You can't separate. He's slow. Yeah.
Can't separate. He ran a 4.55, so it's over. No, Daniel Jeremiah's no wide receiver that's ran a 4.55 has been drafted in the top 20 or whatever he said. Okay, Drake London didn't run a 40, period. And let me tell you, he would have been probably around that 4.53, 4.55 number, and he still went number 8 overall to the Falcons, because guess why? He was a great player, and he didn't need anything more in the speed department to be a great player. So I think McMillan is suffering from a lot of the same stereotyping that we always see with these bigger players. Now, I'm not saying he's a perfect wide receiver prospect either. I'm not here to say oh my God, why would anybody have a problem with McMillan? Because I understand that. And we talked about that. We were pretty transparent about that. On 2.0, it was man, it seems like he might have gotten a little worse against man coverage this last season. And that is a little bit concerning when you talk about a player that has a skill set like this. But at the same time, I'm not pressing the panic button. For under any circumstance. I think if he falls on NFL draft day, I will be very surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen another wide range of outcomes for Tetairoa McMillan in the draft. All the mock drafts that come out, you see him either going 12 or you see him going 22, and he's going to go mid first round. He's probably hopefully goes to a wide receiver needy team, because He's that kind of guy that can be an alpha wide receiver. He's the type of guy that you can get him the ball in contested catch situations. You can get him the ball in the red zone. You can get him the ball with room to run, and he can break tackles. Like, I think there are so many things that McMillan can do that you maybe discount just because of the prototype that he is and the style of players you imagine when you think of guys that are like 6'5", 220, that, you know, have good hands and can make good contested catches. You kind of form this, you know, archetype of player in your mind and then project that onto the prospect. And I think that's inappropriate with McMillan. I think that he's a little more nuanced. He's smoother. He's a little quicker. He's better with the ball in his hands. He's, you know, maybe not as strong, but he's got like glue hands. So I think there's a lot of things that people like about McMillan. And, you know, once you actually like sit down and really pick it apart, you're like, man, this is different than what I was expecting, in a good way.
So number one.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll say he is the dessert, and I'll say I never get tired of it. That cheesecake comes out at the end, and I'm like, bring it on, baby.
Hell yeah.
Because he is Ashton Jeanty is, you know, obviously the best player in the class. I think everybody agrees with that at this point. There's no controversies with this one. The questions are, where will he go in the NFL draft? And as we talked about earlier, it seems like we aren't even going to go through the exercise that we did with Bijan, where it was like, it took probably until draft week for people to finally start to come to grips with the fact that, like, yeah, maybe he's not going in the 20s, you know? And like with Jeanty, we've just gotten there already. It's like, yeah, he might go number 6 to the Raiders. Like, and I'm glad that we've reached that point. I think we've gotten there for a number of reasons, like the renaissance of like running in the NFL. I think it's opening the door to like more backs going in the first round again, and us being comfortable mocking players this high at the running back position. But in terms of fantasy, I don't care where he goes. Doesn't matter. Raiders, Bears, Cowboys, anywhere in between. I don't care. He is a special talent. Running, receiving, that's also forgotten, I think, even now with this player, because he didn't do a lot of that this past year. But he is an all-around, versatile, complete running back weapon that, you know, maybe we've thrown around the name CMC a few times, and I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is a player that it doesn't get old talking about, but it also doesn't get old watching. Like, every game, this is like a box office player, a season tickets player that you can put on as the face of your franchise and, you know, put on the marquee of your stadium. Like, come see Ashton Jeanty play, because he is special. And, you know, a couple of years ago, like you said, we had Bijan. We also had Gibbs in that draft class that went super high. He went 12 in that draft, where Bijan goes 8. And when you are just fighting for the one guy, you know, people are like, well, why would you draft Jeanty when you can just get whoever later? You know, one of these, get pick of the litter that we've talked about already today. Why, when you can just get them later? Try watching Ashton Jeanty and then come back to me, because I think that'll answer your question. Like, nobody can tackle him. First of all, he sees the field like you are playing Madden. Like, you have the full field and you can see everything, and it's in the little bit, like, it's slowed down to like 0.85. Like, that's how it feels like Ashton Jeanty is navigating the field. And he's just kind of bouncing off of people. The contact balance is second to none. The stiff arm is incredible. He feels like he's playing on a gyroscope. Like, these guys are bouncing off of him, and it never feels like he ever is leaving just straight up and down. So I won't get sick of watching him. I won't get sick of talking about him. If anything happens like where this doesn't work out, I will be the most surprised that I've been about a player.
Surprised and sad, because it's just such a fun fun style of running back. Like I really hope that, like you said, we get the name in the lights, we get the banners, we get, the next 6 years of the Jeanty experience for some NFL team and for our fantasy teams at the same time.
Amen.
Well, there you have it. That is Superflex. We were I think we had like all of the same names except a couple, like with Ward, obviously, and then Loveland, and you had Neal and Abdul Carter. And I think otherwise we had 10 same. Yeah. I mean, we're getting there. We're locking in. It's almost like we spend a lot of time together and
chatting about these guys.
Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to have that. This is such an interesting quarterback class, very unlike last year, where the conversation in Superflex is not just, well, if Cam Ward's number 1, then I guess he's number 2 in our draft. That's not always how it needs to work. So I'm glad.
Again, that's probably how it's going to go in your draft. And again, that's okay.
Right.
Because quarterbacks are valuable and you got to get them if your team needs them. But if you're not a quarterback needy team in the draft, don't reach on these guys just because they're quarterbacks. I know you can use them as bargaining chips and you can trade them to teams, but if you're using them to be the guy on a team and you want to have the next whoever, I just don't think. Maybe sit this year out and trade back to 2026.
How about this? How about just trade back in general?
Yeah, exactly.
You find a team that wants Cam Ward, wants Shadur. These guys are flashy. You're going to probably have people in your leagues that are like, I really want this guy on my team. Trade back. Take that opportunity and move back and get.
I have those guys in my league.
Yeah, exactly. And, they're taking Cam at 3, you're taking Tyler Warren or Emeka Egbuka at 9,
Right.
All right. So we did a mock. We got some rankings. And next week, I think we have coined it the start of Camp Dynasty's path to the draft, where we shift a little bit away, not all the way away from Dynasty and more towards the NFL draft, but always in the context of these campers, our Dynasty rookie players. And that starts next week with our mock draft reactions show. If you're unfamiliar, we're going to take a look at several mock drafts from the top names in the industry and look at where they are projecting these guys, our campers, to go, and talk about those fits and talk about those landing spots and kind of where the buzz is, where the hype meter is on some of these guys in terms of where they're going to get drafted as well. So always look forward to that.
Get to do a little bit of pearl clutching. I can't believe they put him that low. I think that's
Piper, no.
Piper, why would you do that? And then Daniel Jeremiah, I love you. You get it. Classic. That kind of thing.
Brugler and DJ just always sitting on top, and then it's some rando at
we 33rd team, and it's
I might try to get a Field Yates mock in next week. He's the next man up with the ESPN draft coverage. So
right, ESPN
if Matt Miller's
doing a lot of things right.
If Matt Miller's is the heir to Kuiper, then Field Yates is the heir to McShay, who we also haven't heard from a lot, but I did see put out a mock, so maybe we bring him back too.
Yeah, there we go.
Independent.
One of the legends.
Yeah. Kicked to the curb by big media, unbelievable.
Who always, again, make all the right decisions.
If you enjoyed our 2025 Dynasty Rookie Superflex rankings show, the one and only of the year, be sure to find us on Twitter at camp_dynasty and TikTok at camp.dynasty. And if you are on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and like before you leave the video if you enjoyed, because we really appreciate that. It helps a lot, as does following, rating, reviewing, all of the podcasty things. If you are a podcast listener, audio only, that all helps as well. So thank you.
Go watch Severance if you care about yourself. It ends on Friday. is the season finale. So if you get a free trial of Apple TV right now, you can binge it all with the season finale of season 2. You won't regret it.
The Camp Dynasty podcast network installment number 2 is our film and TV.
Seriously. Our
2026 mock draft of Oscar nominated films.
I'm in.
Thanks for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week, and we'll see you next week.